Welcome to Dr. T's Cookbook of Awesomeness. Today, we are making a classic lasagna with bolognese and a creamy bechamel sauce. So if you don't like lasagna, go ahead and hit like and subscribe and get on out of here. But if you do like lasagna, hit like and subscribe and keep watching. Now let's make something awesome. First and foremost, a bolognese is a meat sauce. It's not a tomato sauce. It does have some tomatoes in there, but it is primarily a meat sauce. So that's why we have pork and beef. And it's spicy pork for a little extra kick. Then we have our mirepoix minus the celery. I don't have any celery, but I do have some garlic here and some bay leaves to boot. Some tomato paste is going to add some nice richness along with the whole San Marzano tomatoes, which will mash up a little bit into our sauce. And then we're gonna have the classic whole milk and a bit of red wine to reduce and add to that richness and depth of flavor for our sauce. First off, we're going to lubricate our cooking vessel with some extra virgin olive oil. We have a large Dutch oven that we're heating to a medium to medium high heat. We're going to add our beef and our spicy Italian sausage to this, and we want to cook it up and get a little bit of a sear on it. Now at this stage, you have two options. You can look to brown this meat quite thoroughly and get a very good sear on it, and that will bring out the maximum amount of flavor. However, some purists believe that you should not get a hard sear and thorough browning in order to keep a silky and velvety texture in your sauce. So it's up to you. If you want that little extra flavor, go ahead and sear the crap out of it. And if you'd rather have that silky, velvety texture, go a little bit easier on it. It's up to you. As you work on browning your meat, don't forget to season. We want to season all along the way, and we'll start off with some freshly cracked black pepper and a little bit of coarsely ground kosher salt. Now, as we skip forward in time here, we can see that our meat is getting browned nicely, and we want to make sure that our texture, again, is as smooth as possible. So that means breaking up our meat, and I'm using a potato masher to get this meat broken up into small, fine pieces. Now, once your meat is completely brown and broken up into those miniature, minute pieces as we had talked about, it's time to go ahead and add our veggies. So, typically you'd have a mirepoix, which is onions, carrots, and celery. I didn't have any celery. Well, I did, but it was really gross and floppy and flaccid. It was gross. So I skipped it, and that's okay. I didn't really love the celery in the bolognese anyway. So I've chopped up my onion, got some carrots finely diced, and then I've got some garlic. Now I'm just going to mix that in with the meat and let that simmer for just a little bit until they start to soften. And a few minutes have gone by, and it's time to put in our tomato paste. So we're going to squirt in 1 to 2 tablespoons, probably 2 tablespoons worth here. You definitely don't need a whole can. Just get the stuff in the tube. It's really handy. Squirt in a couple tablespoons and mix it around thoroughly. The key to using tomato paste is making sure that it cooks out properly. You can't just throw it in and then just keep on moving. You want to give that tomato paste a time to heat up and cook out the raw flavors. That will give you the maximum amount of tomatoey richness. After you've allowed that to cook down, now is time for our wine. We're going to add half to maybe a full cup. Just go ahead and eyeball it and put in what you feel is necessary. But what we want here is for the wine to cook down and concentrate. So it cooks off all the alcohol and most of the moisture, but leaves behind the nice condensed, beautiful flavors and aromas from that wine. I'm going to add a little bit more here. And again, we're just going to let it cook down until it's reduced by at least half. Now that reduction may take 5-10 minutes. It takes a little while. But once that's completed, now is the time to add the whole milk. Whole milk adds a ton of richness. And you want to go with the whole milk because you want the extra fat and flavor. But we're going to do the exact same thing here. We'll add the whole milk, mix it around, and then we're going to let it simmer for a little while to let the excess moisture evaporate and concentrate the delicious flavor of the milk into the sauce. Our sauce is up to a nice simmer, so now we're going to keep simmering this at a low temperature. We're going to pop the lid on and put in the oven at 250 to 275 and let it just slowly cook for about 2 to 3 hours. Fresh out of the oven, and you can see our meat sauce has reduced to a beautiful consistency here. I forgot to show putting in the bay leaves, but those are in there as well. Now, we put the sauce in the oven, and I did leave the lid just cocked ever so slightly to let out a little extra moisture so we can condense things down. But as you can see, using that potato masher really paid off. Our meat is in nice, small, velvety pieces. And the long, slow cooking time in low temperature has created a very tender and velvety sauce. And we have some more ingredients. We of course have our lasagna noodles, and then we also have low moisture part skim mozzarella cheese, some cottage cheese. Feel free to use ricotta if you like, but this is what my grandma used to use. I've got butter, flour, and whole milk to make our bechamel sauce, and we're going to finally grate some Parmesan to kick that up just a notch. We're going to make our roux for our bechamel sauce, and that means melting down some butter. We've got a half stick of butter, and we're going to add to that a equal amount of flour, which is 4 tablespoons. So 4 tablespoons of butter, 4 tablespoons of flour. We're going to add the flour in a little bit at a time so that we can stir it in and make sure that we don't have any lumps. We want a nice consistent mixture without any lumps. Once it's fully incorporated, we want to make sure that we keep cooking this until the raw flour taste is completely gone from our roux. We don't want to cook it too far though, where the roux becomes brown, but just long enough so that we know that the rawness of the flour has cooked out. Seems we're at a good spot here to start adding in our whole milk. We're going to add about 4 cups of whole milk. And again, a little bit at a time. As you see, it starts to coagulate quite quickly once you start adding in the liquid. So we're going to add in a little at a time, keep stirring, and then add a little bit more and a little bit more. And by doing it this way, you're going to make sure that you have a nice and smooth sauce rather than a clumpy, gross sauce. Whew! Done with all the mixing. We're at a pretty good consistency here. Not too thin, not too thick. It coats the back of a spoon pretty well. Probably a little bit thicker than that. Now we're going to grate in a little bit of fresh garlic. I'm just doing a little bit here. This fresh garlic that I've got is pretty potent. So we're just going to do, I don't know, half of a big clove here and get that in there. And bust out that Parmesan and grate that right into our bechamel as well. You can see that I've taken the bechamel off the heat. The residual heat is more than enough to melt up this Parmesan. We're going to get, probably at least a 1/4 cup, maybe close to a 1/2 cup in here and mix it around. Once our cheese has been completely combined, we're just going to season this just a little bit more with a little bit of kosher salt. We'll give it a little bit of a swirl and taste it, and we should be good to go. And note the consistency here. It's thick enough to coat the spoon, but not so thick that it's gloopy. And we are using the oven ready type noodles, but oven ready noodles suck up all the moisture. So while technically you can just throw them right in, I like to soak them a little bit so they're slightly pliable. That way it won't dry out your lasagna. If you're using regular noodles, go ahead and parboil them before you use them. Since it's just my wife and I eating these lasagnas, I've opted to use these small loaf pans to make smaller sized lasagnas. With the batch here, I'm able to make about 3 of them. So instead of making 1 large lasagna, I can make 3 smaller ones and freeze the other 2. So as you can see here, I'm starting off with a little bit of sauce and bechamel on the bottom. I've soaked these noodles so they're a little soft, and I'm just going to put those down in a layer. And like any other lasagna, we're just gonna layer noodles and meat sauce and bechamel and cottage cheese and mozzarella and just stack it up one on top of the other. On the final, very top layer, I'm just putting on the bechamel and cheese because I want the top to get nice and brown. So if we add the meat sauce, it's going to absorb the heat and it's gonna lessen the likelihood that that top layer is gonna get that nice golden brown color. So just bechamel and cheese will give you that nice bubbly golden brown top. And we have 3 delicious pans of lasagna. I had just enough to make 3 full pans, although I ran out of bechamel in that third one and compensated with a little extra meat sauce. But I'm going to cook one up and then wrap the other 2 in plastic and freeze them for later. And we are heading over to the oven to bake this at a summery 350 degrees. We'll leave it in here for about an hour or so. And here it is, fresh out of the oven. A little brown, a little crusty. I do recommend letting this set for 15, maybe even 20 minutes before you dig in. Otherwise, all the juices are still kind of waiting to be reabsorbed. And if you dig in now, it's going to be a kind of a goopy, soupy mess. And here it is dished up. This is about half of that pan. And oh my god, those layers look amazing. We've got meat, we've got cheese, we've got bechamel, we've got noodles. And like I said here, I plated it up a little soon so you can see a lot of that moisture kind of still dripping out, waiting to be reabsorbed. But you know what? All lasagna is good lasagna. It's delicious. And this is absolutely amazing. And if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share. Hit the notification bell so you can get notifications, and stay awesome.